Chapter 25, Manipulated Consent versus Free Will. In an enlightened society, if you wish to buy a house, you just walk up to someone, give them money for the house they are offering, shake hands, and that's it. In a reduced ego society, they understand that what they give you ultimately comes back to them, so they'll make sure to give you the best offer they can. They can be trusted to. In our unenlightened society, the process of a house purchase works a little differently. You might be given a 25-page contract of small print containing vocabulary you do not understand. That document would list every single crazy contingency that the vendor is absolved from if you just sign it. You'll likely have to show it to a lawyer who then requests any number of other documents about zoning laws, natural hazards, and strange certificates about the house, garage, shed, etc. That lawyer then asks you to get an inspector to look at the house, even if your precious intuition as well as your own eyes tell you it's in good condition. But your lawyer might think that only a fool relies on intuition or his own experience and insist you pay $1,000 for inspection. Where normally this simple transaction would involve only two people exchanging a piece of property, it now involves a vendor, a real estate agent, the real estate agent's manager, a house inspector, the vendor's lawyer, your lawyer, as well as the people they would consult before daring to give any advice. That's at least 8 people involved in an activity that would only require 2 in an enlightened world. To top it off, these 8 people might argue with each other over every tiny detail in documents that now comprise of 500 pages. Owing to the complicated mindset of these involved, you might eventually lose interest and withdraw your offer for the house. If the vendor really wanted it sold, he'd make it easy for his customer to get. That's a golden success secret right there. Excessively lengthy contracts on terms and conditions overwhelm people's attention, sometimes leading them to give their consent without fully understanding the facts. If I give my consent in a state of ignorance, I can't call anyone out. After all, I consented. And so we invented the profession of lawyer, a person trained to analyze every eventuality and complex small print and to craft their own manipulative responses to them. In an enlightened society, there will be less need for lawyers because there will be no desire to deceive or overwhelm your fellow humans. The terms and conditions I give to people I wish to do business with are always short and concise, because I want real consent, not manipulated consent. A telltale sign of deceptive intent is confusion, or things being unnecessarily complicated. Under the influence of manipulation, you gave your consent to bad foods, because all of its ingredients are listed on the label, and you can't claim you didn't know about them. But who bothers to read every single label at the grocer's? Wouldn't we rather assume that the food sellers are working in our best interest and offering us healthy foods? You gave your consent to harmful pharmaceuticals because all of its negative side effects are listed on a super small print paper inside its package. The reason for these crazily detailed lists of side effects is a legal one. If they add the list, it means you know the side effects and implicitly consented to taking the drug in spite of them. You supposedly also gave your consent to being spied upon by all kinds of apps on your phone because you clicked yes when they asked if they could access your photos, your contacts, your voice messages, and your data. You have given your consent to all kinds of undesirable things because you were apparently given the choice to opt out. The reason consent is important is spiritual or metaphysical. The good news is that you cannot experience any reality you do not consent to. If you are experiencing realities that you no longer want, You must withdraw your explicit or implicit consent to them. And why do we experience so many things that we do not want? Because of manipulated consent. The whole purpose of life on this free will planet is to choose what you prefer to experience, to exercise choice between good and less good. In general, if you no longer wish to experience something, then you should withdraw your consent to it. How is this done? By stating, deciding, or realizing that certain ideas, thoughts, and activities no longer apply to you, and that by withdrawing attention from them, you are no longer subject to them. If you doubt it could be that simple, give it a try. Nobody is forcing you to be with a particular person, at a certain location, doing a certain thing. If you live in fear, then you might be under the illusion that you are being forced. But in reality, you are able to walk away from a negative situation anytime. People using your fear to force you to do things against your will are in gross violation of universal law. Unfortunately, we continue to give such people our implied consent by failing to declare that we want nothing to do with them, or not following up on what we declare through new decisions and actions. The partner of a violently abusive spouse wouldn't leave her husband because she was afraid that she couldn't make a living on her own. How often have we heard that story in many variations? The mechanics of it are clear as day. If you want to force or manipulate consent, you first have to create fear. That is, you have to teach people that they cannot attract money, love, health, or any sort of abundance at all on their own. You have to create a dependency. That's the extreme version of it. Here is a more subtle version. Some people tell me that their business will fail if they get demonetized by YouTube. They have created a slavish dependency on YouTube, just like that spouse has created a slavish dependency on an abusive husband. The truth of the matter is that every human being has access to an infinite field of energy for their healing, wealth, and well-being. If you leave that abusive husband and have faith in the infinite abundance that you are, if you drop YouTube and have faith in the infinite abundance that you are, then you don't have to give consent to something you do not want to consent to. If you believe you can no longer exist without a certain person, place, or thing, you have brainwashed yourself into believing you cannot break free from that. And then you'll give your consent to all kinds of unpleasantries. The abused spouse may not want to give consent, but staying in the relationship is like giving consent to it. Her subconscious mind views it as consent. Her husband probably also views it as consent. If she were to say, "I do not want to be beaten by you anymore. If you do so one more time, I will leave you, or I will get help." Those are clear statements of non-consent. So, if the next time she is beaten, she leaves, that is an even clearer statement of non-consent. If he is wise, he will stop hitting her. Unfortunately, some people reside at such low levels of consciousness that even non-consent won't stop them. They prey on people that are too afraid or unconscious to provide non-consent, and should anyone dare to have a will of their own, seek to subdue that person. But even in such cases, you can withdraw your consent by getting the help of police. You may think none of this applies to you, as you did not grow up in a mafia family, but to a lesser degree it applies to almost everyone living on planet Earth. If you wish to create a better reality for yourself, do get clear on things you consent to and things you no longer consent to. Remove the things you no longer consent to from your life. Stop giving them attention. If necessary, remove yourself physically. The individual human being has great power and ability, and yet uses hilariously little of it. Imagine seeing a tall, athletic guy cowering in fear in front of an ant. That's the comical situation of most humans. In its essence, reality creation coaching means training people in the use of free will. This kind of training wouldn't be necessary if free will weren't being subverted on this planet. But we are allowing our free will to be subverted of our own free will. Nothing bad can happen to you unless you permit it to. Why do bad things happen in the first place? Why is there even negativity in the world? I'd say that the purpose of this planet is to train our free will, to train your ability to choose between positive and negative. And if we are meant to train our free will, then there has been an attempted subversion of our free will. Likewise, if you want to learn to play soccer, you need an opponent. So, negativity is not the problem. The opponent is not the problem. If you wanted to learn soccer, you wouldn't view an opponent as a problem. The problem is that you believe an ant is something to be afraid of. Once you discover that you can give and withdraw consent to any reality at all, you gradually begin designing, crafting, creating, and cultivating the life of your greatest dreams.